Welcome to the Mail and Guardian podcast, brought to you in partnership with the National Lotteries Commission as part of Fraud Awareness Week. So today we're unpacking as to how the NLC is turning the tide on governance and specifically looking at strengthening integrity, accountability, and transparency through its forensic framework and digital innovation like the Thuthuka online grant management system. My name is Akia Ngube, and to help us unpack this subject is a Chief Audit Executive at the NLC, whose division leads internal audit, forensic investigations, Vincent Jones. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Kia, for having me.
So let's start. Please, could you give us an overview of your division and its role within the NLC?
Kia, sometimes internal auditors, people think we're the policemen.
Okay.
But actually we're not. We are management and the board's assurance partners. So we exist to provide independent and objective assurance to management and the board, whether the controls are working as intended. So our division consists of 3 units, internal audit, IT audit, as well as forensic investigations.
Okay.
And annually, we would conduct an independent risk assessment. We would compile a plan of high-risk areas to be audited. We would present that plan to management and the board for approval. And this plan would consist of, for instance, a grant management audit or a supply chain audit. We would then review the controls, compliance with policy. We would make a conclusion whether the control environment is effective or not. If we identify any weaknesses, we would even make recommendations to management on how to strengthen those controls and mitigate the risk. We then report our findings to the board audit and risk committee to ensure that independence.
Okay, it sounds like there's T's and C's plus more T's and C's and a couple more T's and C's within your department.
Yes.
But she's mentioned something which is quite important that it sounds like in your work, and that's independence. But how important is independence in your work and in your division?
Independence is extremely important. It equals credibility of the work and the output. And the way that internal audit is set up at the NLC is that our division reports directly to the board through the board audit and risk committee. And this committee is made up of 2 members and 2 independent external members, which means that this committee is independent. And their responsibility is to appoint the Chief Audit Executive, to approve our plan, as well as our resources, and to evaluate our performance. And that actually ensures that internal audit is independent, and that when we present our findings, that it's credible and that we are able to do our audits without fear or favor, without management interference, and that it allows management and the board then to take ethical decisions based on our findings that we report.
Okay.
Yes.
And then the NLC recently received an unqualified audit opinion. Number one, what does that mean? And then secondly, how or what does that signify for your division and the organization as well? Yeah.
That is a significant achievement.
Okay.
And it's been quite a journey because the NLC had qualified audit opinions for a few consecutive years. And an unqualified audit opinion means that we have produced a set of credible financial statements which can be relied upon. It also shows that our internal control environment has improved.
Okay.
And I think how that relates to the role of internal audit is that in the work that we do, we make recommendations to management to implement. And if they implement those recommendations, it ensures that the control environment is strengthened. And I think it just speaks to itself that we received an unqualified audit opinion, and I think we are on a steady state now at the NLC.
Well, congratulations on the unqualified audit opinion. Let's now look into the forensic framework of your department. What is the forensic framework and why was it introduced?
Interesting question. The forensic investigation methodology was developed to ensure that we have a structured approach when we receive whistleblower tip-offs through our whistleblower hotline or even complaints from the public, to ensure that we have a structured approach of investigating these complaints. And this methodology is also aligned to our Association of Certified Fraud Examiners standards to ensure that we conduct these investigations in a structured manner, following a planning, interviewing and reporting process, and also then reporting on the recommendations of these investigations.
Okay. And then how does this tie in or link with internal auditing then?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's two separate processes because internal auditing is risk-based, and the forensic framework works on allegations or tip-offs that you receive.
Okay.
So when we complete an investigation, the outcome of that investigation will also inform how internal audit will approach certain risk areas. Yes.
And then in terms of fraud statistics and control effectiveness, because I do hear an underlying theme in terms of control, and all of that. But from a completed forensic work, how effective are current controls compared to those in previous years?
That's a very interesting question because when we conduct investigations, it's usually based on tip-offs of projects that were funded during previous financial years. So you would have allegations of a project that was funded in the year 2021, 2022.
Oh, wow.
So, which means that there was a different set of control framework that existed at that point in time. But from the statistics and the outcome of cases we've completed recently, there's definitely a decline because most of the cases refers to financial years 22, 23. And since then, the NLC has implemented lots of new controls to actually strengthen the previous findings identified.
And then in terms of measures placed in to prevent fraud, because, you want to be proactive, you don't want to be reactive, right?
Yes.
So what kind of measures are put in place for being proactive at the NLC?
This is a very interesting journey that we're on. We recently launched the Thuthuka online grant system, which replaced our previous grant management system, which was very manual based and it also had lots of limitations. So the Thuthuka online grant system has built-in controls. It has you can verify through our API partners someone's ID number with CIPC. So you can do independent validation checks, and it will also identify possible red flags throughout the grant funding value chain. And then another initiative that we from the internal audit has implemented is our continuous auditing processes. Now that we're digitalizing, we're able to write scripts that can plug into the system and then identify possible findings throughout the grant funding value chain.
Has this digitization helped the NLC in terms of making it more proactive?
Definitely, because once you start onboarding as an NPO and there's an API and your ID number, for instance, cannot be verified by CIPC or DSD, you won't be able to continue with the process. So there's certain blocks and triggers in the process that would assist in that early detection.
All right. And then how do these measures actually really impact the fraud landscape at the NLC?
I think I also need to talk about other measures that we've implemented at the NLC, and lifestyle audits, for instance, is one of them. We developed a policy and we started with lifestyle audits in 2024, and the board, executive management, and all NLC staff has undergone lifestyle audits. And I think this also talks to transparency and integrity, and it ensures that the governance frameworks that we've reviewed at the NLC has impacted on reduction in fraud cases coming forward.
So people are hiding their lifestyles of pop bottles. Or you finding out, can they really pop the bottles on the budget that they have?
Exactly, whether you're living within your means.
Yes, definitely so. So we are in conversation with Vincent Jones, the Chief Audit Executive at the NLC, and he's unpacking, the framework behind forensic framework and, of course, innovation, as mentioned, like the Thuthuka online grant management system. Let's get into governance, culture, and collaboration. How is a culture of integrity embedded across the NLC?
So it starts with tone at the top, with the board
yes.
and executive management, and the review of our disclosure policies, and then to ensure that our policies that we implement it consistently. We are transparent about the policies that we implement at the NLC, and that from an audit perspective, we actually provide assurance to management and the board whether these policies are working as intended. So if there's a disclosure process, we would go and audit that disclosure process to see whether it is actually working and whether there's any gaps to report on.
So I've also heard an underlying theme of collaboration quite a
Yes,
bit
yes.
within our conversation this afternoon. But how does the NLC strengthen integrity through number one, collaboration, and number two, lessons learned?
So with collaboration, we collaborate quite a lot with the SIU.
Okay.
Because that's one of our partners where we do investigations with, and we share a lot of information with them, as well as the SAPS, when we open criminal cases of the matters we've completed. So those collaborative efforts with our agencies that we work with sharing information, making sure that cases are completed up until the end, and that people are held accountable so that the integrity of the whole grant funding processes are maintained.
So it is Fraud Awareness Week.
Yes.
What message would you like to leave in terms of responsibility, integrity, accountability, and that's how that's been done with your department at the NLC?
Okay. So, Fraud Awareness Week, it's just a reminder to all of us that it doesn't matter how strong control environment you have. Fraud and corruption out there there's always someone out there to see how they can circumvent a new control. And I think my message is that we must all be vigilant, and it's all our duty as the public to ensure that public funds are spent, with integrity and with the intended purposes.
Transparency as well.
Yes.
So thank you so much for joining us today to unpack this very important subject, to know how the NLC is strengthening its governance within the framework of forensic, and of course your innovation in terms of digital innovation with the Thuthuka online management grant as well. And as Fraud Awareness Week continues, I do trust and believe will go beyond just this week. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And that was it for today. Let's meet up again next time, only on the Mail and Guardian podcast in partnership with the NLC, as we unpack all things NLC and, of course, integrity. We unpack transparency and, of course, credibility as well. Gyangob is the name. Please do make sure that you keep yourself and others safe.